So we're going to talk a bit about web traffic growth for nonprofits. And our guest presenter today is Alison Knott. Alison is a lot of things, an international tech speaker who's passionate about the intersection of the web, creativity, and business and nonprofits. And the mandate, the thing that gets her excited is that she wants to raise web literacy for organizations and entrepreneurs. Her presentations, as you'll see, are a blend of enthusiasm and actual actionable lessons. We're going to have just the very, very bare minimum of tech jargon. In addition to public speaking and running her consultancy agency, Alison also mentors female entrepreneurs and has done a whole bunch of teaching of students to bring them into web smartness. And so with that, I'm going to get out of the way and pass you over to Alison, who's going to blow your mind with expertise. So
I'm going to reach over to my right. I'm going to take the baton and I'm going to put it here in my hands. Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me on your lunch. I'm located in Halifax. The future's great. It's 4 o'clock, 4:10. Everything's going well. So in case you're wondering, it's great. It's just really cold and really dark. But, you know, hopefully the internet will stay in touch. We have this awful problem in Halifax where salty fog knocks out our internet, which is kind of funny if you think about it. But I'm going to go right to it today, darlings. So click this, because I got a lot and I value your time greatly. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about traffic growth with the 8-step traffic growth approach, which you can download at this link here at bit.ly/net2vin. Sorry, I couldn't get an A in there. Someone else already took it on Bitly. But what I'm going to do today is we're going to take this 8-step process, and this is basically my talk in a nutshell. So it might look a little overwhelming. That's okay. I'm going to give you a top level of what's happening in your traffic growth approach. And along the bottom parts, you'll see that there's little parts of the looks like a little thumbtack. Those are free tools that you can use to help you with each step of these 8-step traffic growth approach. But to be a little inception about this, if you go to that link, you're also going to see I'm kind of employing some of these steps I'm going to talk about. Namely, this worksheet is yours. Take it, use it to your advantage. The other right-hand side of that website, you'll probably see right there, is an option to download a bundle. And what that bundle contains is the exact same pink links that are in this PDF, but it gives you access to my keyword research and checklist bundle, as well as my Google Analytics cheat sheet, because I have a lot to cover today. I'm not necessarily going to be able to get into all the detail, but I also promise tech-free jargon. So that link will be available. The other thing we're going to do today is you can see there's sort of 8 little puzzle pieces today. So I will go over each step, and then I'll have time for about 1 or 2 questions for each step. And a couple of those steps, I'm also going to ask for some chat participants. And Eli has been so gracious to be heralding that so I can keep the chat tidy. So there will be time to talk about, have 1 or 2 questions about each of these steps. And I'm also available afterwards for a little bit more time in case you have some more. So Eli, are you okay if I no longer look at this chat and I can just dive into her?
absolutely, everyone throw it into the chat and I will be the person who speaks it out for you.
Okay, perfect. And also, if you get lost with it, there's a little pink bar down here, bit.ly/net2vin is where you can get this information as well. So you can see I've made this little gritty guy here with 8 steps. And on the very last step, you'll see that, you know, it kind of starts off with measuring your success. Why am I going through these 8 steps? And you're going, oh, great, Alison, just another thing to load onto our laps today. But the reason we're talking about this traffic growth is there's a certain way we wish that websites worked. I wish it worked this way. The ideal is that someone sees your social post, one social post, and they go directly to your website, to that very valuable piece of information you gave them, right? So 1 tweet or 1 Facebook post or 1 Instagram live or what have you, they go to that and then they convert. Done, right? No. This is not actually how websites work at all. And as time has gone on and we've gotten a lot better at using Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and all kinds of other analytics systems, this couldn't be farther from the truth. This is not how people actually go to your website and digest and become more savvy with that traffic. It looks more like this. Now, don't worry too much what this thing is all about. This is a multi-channel funnel in Google Analytics, but don't worry too much about where to find it or what it does. What I want you to focus on is the fact that On the left side here, these are all the times that people that Google Analytics could say, I could follow that user over a period of time of the different ways they came to your website. So on the left-hand side here, you see that there's different little blocks, are different colors, and those are channels. So if you want to think about your website like an octopus, it has many arms, right? It's not just your Facebook messages. It's also your email campaign. It's also people searching organically. It's also people paying for Google Ads or for people going in directly. So what you can see here is on the left-hand side are just different groupings of how people interacted with the website. And on the right-hand side, you have their conversions. This could be whatever the person who owns this website sets it up to be. That could be we get a conversion every time they buy something, or every time they go to a thank you page, or every time they fill out our donation button, or anytime they click a certain video. The possibilities are endless. But what you'll notice is that there was 144 conversions for the site, but in order for that to happen, 144 different people first found the website organically, and then they came back directly to the website. It took them 2 touch points before they converted. And in case you're wondering, well, what in the heck is direct? That's the bucket that Google Analytics goes, I don't know. We can't tell where they came from. We don't know. It got lost in the shuffle. We don't know if they typed the URL in. We don't know if they use bookmarks. We don't know if they use incognito. We don't know what's going on here. So that's what happens there. But if you want to get really, really fancy about it, if you go down to number 8, 3 times, it took 3 different people. They had to visit the site 1, 2, 3 times. And then 4 times they found the site from referrals. And a referral are other websites that have links to your site. So then they went back to the website directly, and then they visited the website again by doing organic search. And then they had to go back and look at the website 2 more times. So you can see here, this is the whole cookie thing you keep hearing about, where your website is trying to track people. It figured out that 3 times for someone to convert, they had to visit the website 3 times, visit another website 4 times, come back to the site twice, go through organic search, and then go through direct. So this is the reality of what we're looking at. People don't see one thing, go to your site, and then convert. Doesn't happen. There's too much noise, too much going on. Most of us are far too busy to be that well organized. So the goal today is to think about all the different ways that we can continue to grow our site traffic with information we already have. And so in this sheet, I'm actually going to start with number 8 at the end, only because I find measuring it is so important, that success. And if we do it until the end, we get really tired. Everybody wants to go because it's after lunch for you guys. I want to go because it's supper time. So I want to make sure we cover this. So when you're measuring your success, if you don't know where you come from with your data, I find often in teams, it's really frustrating to think the work you're doing has any effect, because you do all this work, you finally get funding for something, you get to have someone come in for a project, and you do all this work, and no one really knows what the results were supposed to be, so it doesn't get put into budget for next year. No one wants to keep going with it, right? So the first step is you have to audit to understand where your historical data is. If you want to grow more followers this year, you need to know how many you had last year and what key areas you saw growth in. If you want to grow your site traffic, you need to know, do you need to grow your organic site traffic? Do you need to grow people from the associations you're a part of or the listing services that you're a part of? You need to know that. And you need to pick just a few objectives or goals and apply those changes. So it's not, I really don't recommend redoing the website and doing SEO and getting a YouTube channel and. You're setting yourself up for failure as an organization at that point, because we're thrown in too many directions and it's hard for us to measure that success. So I believe to just know where you come from, pick 1 or 2 objectives. Like, we just want to grow our donor list by 25% in 6 months, for example. That's a much easier thing to work with. And you have to give it time, especially with websites. You're going to have an SEO component, which we're going to cover today. You're talking a month or a quarter or a season or a year. It takes time to measure the success. So you need to understand what makes sense in the timeline and the time and the life cycle of your nonprofit, and when you're going to have serious time to sit down and review this measurement. And of course, once you do, you would then go ahead and review and adjust as needed. Before you go and turn your head to the new shiny object syndrome, or before you get ready to put together your budget and you're like, well, we don't really know if that thing we did worked or not, pause and review, and then start that cycle again. In fact, with this 8-step growth approach, I recommend that you're going to do this for one topic and just leave it alone for 2 to 3 months, just to make sure that you're doing it all right, that you're seeing the traction you saw, that you're setting up what you want to do, and then you can find out what was working and what's not, so you can do it again even faster. So, Eli, are there any questions in the chat as far as measuring success? Super short and tight, I know, but any big questions?
Keep going so far. I'll interrupt you later.
Perfect. Okay. So you might say to me, well, we want more traffic. Heck, that's why we're here. We're looking at your face in a tiny window, a la Brady style, Alison. So what's going on here? Say, well, when I work with clients and nonprofits, we want word site traffic. I'm like, it's kind of the same like asking, I want more money. Do you want $2, $200, $2,000, $2 million? What's going on here? So I would say you need to be more strategic about it. So I would recommend something along the lines of increase organic search traffic by 10% in 2 months. Now, where do I get organic search? Because you know that you're going to be working on that. You've already got a steady flow from other ways for your works for your website, but you're going to focus on that one arm of your octopus I'm talking about. And I'm going to say 10%. These numbers are arbitrary to whoever wants to have them. The only thing I care about is growth. So a number that is bigger in the future than it is right now. But because this group or whoever we're doing this hypothetical for did that audit research, they know that they could achieve 10% growth in 2 months because they have an idea where they come from. They know what capacity they have to help that out. And in 2 months, they could do it. So I often get, well, Alison, what are good numbers? It certainly depends on what you're trying to achieve, where you are, and where you want to go. And one example of that could be Google Search Console. And again, this isn't a class about how to use that. The only thing you need to look about this is you can see that that graph is going up. And what this graph is telling us is that over this monthly period, their organic traffic is gaining traction because that blue line is how many times someone clicked the website. That's beginning to get more and more frequent. And that purple line is total impressions, which means that Google, the search part of Google is considering that website for more keywords and more context. So our goal is to move that graph upward. So of course, there's lots you can do that. There's different systems you can use. I mean, you could use Google Analytics, Google Search Console. You could use your social analytics. You could use the newsletter platform reporting, anything you have, but it's important to start looking at these numbers. Is it boring? Is it unsexy? Kinda, but you don't want to waste your time and valuable resources not knowing where you're going to end up with that. So, great, but where do we start with that? Well, we start with choosing a topic. And the idea is that what I'm going to talk to nonprofits about gaining traffic growth is to not think about your website as this basket containing all of the content of what you provide, your mandates and what you're driving for, what you provide, and your donations and your drives and your volunteers. That's great, but traffic growth is more effective if you narrow in on one kind of topic. So you want to think about a topic that's inside of what you do that might have a few subtopics to help you think about this content that you're going to create around this traffic growth. And you want to reuse content that you already have that you can repurpose as a page content, post content, and opt-ins, which we're going to get to in the next step. So I often say to nonprofits, do you have any old brochures that you had printed back in the days of yore when people could actually come out and like take brochures from your hand? Is there any content that's kind of out of date, but you already have the asset files for that? Did you participate in a webinar earlier this year or a summit or a symposium with what your mandate's all about with other organizations and you walked away with great content from that? Were you in older newspaper reviews? Do you get asked the same questions over and over? Is there any content that you've already made that you could turn into something that would help turn folk who don't necessarily know everything about your organization, but they're interested in the topic that your organization is all about? And also researching similar content from other orgs just like you and saying, well, they have a great perspective on this, but they're on the East Coast. We have a different perspective because we're here on the West Coast. Or that information's really out of date. I think if we could add about this, this, and this due to the new provincial funding that came out earlier this year, we could really rock this content or improve it. So it's really important from that perspective to go ahead and number one, turn off your phone so you don't hear it go off all the time. There we go. But also to think about what these topics can be. So I want to know from this, I'm going to do something a little live right here. Someone in the chat want to offer up a topic they want to brainstorm on, and I'm going to show you how I go about that topic and how you can figure out not only what you already know about, but from a website perspective, are people looking for this information? Do people want to have this? Basically, keyword research, my darlings, is what I'm going to do for you live right now. So Eli, is there someone in the chat that wants to put up a topic they're thinking about covering on their website?
I've got a great one here.
Sure.
How about watershed restoration?
Watershed restoration.
I know, the
Okay.
dangers of live demos.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So whatever you see on my search here, I have a breadth of clientele as well, and I love weird and wonderful things. But okay, so watershed restoration, excellent. So this is what we're all about. This is our jam, and we're thinking, okay, Alison, we're talking about traffic growth specifically today. So I'm going to say, what can we talk about, or what do you have on hand that other people are looking for? They don't know your organization from the mole on their hand. They have no idea who you are, or maybe they have misconceptions about who you are, or maybe when they think about your mandate, a different, like, maybe they keep thinking of UNICEF or some other huge nonprofits or charity events, right? So what I like to do is I type it into Google and I just start seeing what's coming in here. Of course, I'm in Halifax, so I'm going to get something a little bit different than what y'all will get on your own searches here. But the first step I do is I just see what's happening here in the drop down. Because what's happening is Google is telling me this is what people literally typed in when it came to the term watershed restoration. So we have watershed restoration jobs, water restoration definition, grant program, plan, coalition, Idaho, Missoula, groups. So that is one thing to think about with that. So I'm wondering from the person in the chat, is there one of these that makes the most sense for us to drill down a little bit further? Maybe grant program? I wonder.
Interesting. Yes, Stephanie actually works in the grant program area. So that, yes, Stephanie is reinforcing yes to grants.
Okay, sure. So the next step we do is we need to understand, and this is important from an SEO perspective as well. You can write the greatest content out there, but there's only 10 spots on Google's page one. And I know that's some levity there, but also like roughly 1 million pieces of content are published every day, and about 96% will never be seen by a search engine. Because Google and Bing and Yahoo and DuckDuckGo and all of those, they only have so many spots on page one and page two, right? So the next step you want to think about is, well, when I type this in, this is Alison in Halifax, Watershed Restoration Grant Program, who is already being chosen by Google as page one? And you can see here that I have wildlife.ca.gov, I have aacounty.org, I've got CWCB, so I got one in Colorado, so okay, cool. There's some Canadian here, but there might be some opportunity for us. And I can see here that in their meta descriptions, they're all making sure they put in the word watershed. And let me see here in Alberta, and I'm just wondering, oh, I didn't get one this time. I was kind of hoping there would be a people also asked in here, but that's okay. So what I'm doing is, before I start writing content, I'm like, do I see, I mean, I can't because I'm not the watershed restoration expert here, but you would start to actually click through these pages and read and digest, why did you think these pages came up first? Were they answering certain questions? Did they have a long format to them? Did they have a lot of things you could download? Were they vouched by a lot of other government programs? It's really important for you to understand in the context of what you're searching for, how who else is out there in that space. And we don't end there because there's also related searches. So Google is kind of pulling down their pants and showing you a little bit how they cluster information together. And this will change all the time over time because new terms come out that become leading things. But you can see here that there's also searches for grants for habitat restoration, environmental restoration grants. So again, if you're talking to your key audience or to your board members or what have you, there could be some terms that will help you to focus in that topic. We're not just going to make content about watershed restoration anymore. We might have one about grants, or maybe we had an old webinar, or there's programs here. Another one we can think about would be, if I did watershed restoration, another one is a website called alsoasked.com. And again, these are all notated on my sheet. We can see here what happens if I plug this into watershed restoration alsonask.com or for alsonask.com. And let me see here, and hopefully it will get chugging along, but it will give you this really beautiful, like almost like a beautiful diagram of where it's organizing people's questions that it's been able to find based on these results. Sometimes it's also a live demo, so Lord knows what it's going to show up with here. And while it's doing that, there's also Google Trends. That's a really great one that you can use. A really basic example I used Google Trends for was someone wanted to know when they were writing their content, do they want to write the acronym RRSP or should they write it out in full? So we went on Google Trends and we plugged in RRSP and then register retirement savings account. And it was by a landslide. No one uses the full write out of this, right? They use it at all. And this is not going to give me anything, I think, today, which is too bad. It could be, it's branching family trees, take up to 2 minutes, it might be busy. But ideally what this would show you is that it would show you questions that people are asked that you could then organize into content. And there's also a link on here for something called Customer Camp Clarity Calls. And I really do believe that if you're unsure where to go with creating content for your site, ask those who are closest to your organization. Ask the best volunteers you have, the donors that really get your mandate. And that customer call it sounds customer call like it's made for products, but it actually can be used for you to how you could actually do an interview with people that you know would get your organization the best. And that thing is, I think it's $149 for that. It's made by Kate Burgoyne, who is here out of Nova Scotia. And it tells you how to do an on-phone interview, all the questions you should ask, how many people you should ask, if you should give them a gift card or not. It tells you how to figure out their journey and all of that. So it's really important when choosing your topic, before you go too far down the mountain, or off the mountain in this case, understand what content you already have, and then use Google to kind of help you figure out what's happening. Ideally, that's just one little piece, but maybe the next thing you want to put is how much do watershed grants cost? And you might see a little block that shows up that says people also asked. Those are questions that you can literally turn into the headings of the content you want to create. Or it might make sense that you go, oh my goodness, that one question alone, we could do a whole topic just on answering how much does it cost, because it depends on X, Y, and Z. Well, X, Y, and Z are 3 parts to that little piece of puzzle that you have, which can be fun. There's a quick start. And in that bundle I give is what I was doing, only more step-by-step inside of that keyword research tool. So once you have that piece done, the next part I was kind of hinting at was that I was trying to see ahead of time who was already out there on page 1. Now, I don't want you to feel like, well, if everyone else is on page 1, how can we even bother? Because that's not really how SEO works. Google is always trying to deliver the best results, and you could have a new piece of content that if you've SEO'd well and you really understand your market, and also in this case, we saw that there was some in Alberta in that, but depending on where you're from, you may be the only piece of content that's in your area, and Google will go, finally, we have something from the East Coast. We can start serving that to users who are asking for this closer to where you're located, or the West Coast, right? But in order for that to happen, we have to remember about performing SEO checklist. Now, this isn't an SEO talk completely, but if you do all that work without formatting it in a way that the little spiders that are crawling around the internet, you're going to have a tough time. And I see a lot of work put into content that's not SEO correctly, and the people go, I guess our SEO was broke. It's like, well, no, you need to format it a certain way, and it takes time. It takes months for something to turn on to analytics or to Google's radar and to actually start going, this content about the watershed restoration, is this about how to make a watershed restoration, or is this questions before? And is it Canadian or American? And does it give money or does it take money? Are people in a situation where they want this right now, or are they only in a finding out phase? All of these questions are being asked with SEO, but if you have it formatted a certain way, that makes these little bots crawl through your stuff a lot faster, and they'll understand what you're trying to achieve. And that's what speeds up SEO results. So in that, there are lots of things to do with SEO, a lot. And there's lots of great other resources out there for SEO top to bottom and all that stuff. I have given you a check sheet, a checklist, and I would say one of the most critical components to think about is you need to have headings in your content. often I see fantastic content written, but like the headings aren't actually heading 1, 2, 3, 4, which like the bots need, right? What I often see is someone just bolds it or they change the font size and color, but the actual syntax of those headings aren't H2 or H3. It's sort of like having a book and you want to turn to the table of contents to kind of cross-reference, is this book that's about cooking duck? Is it actually about cooking ducks or is it about ducks cooking? So you can go through your table of contents and go, oh, it's going to cover seasoning duck. It'll cover the tools I need to use. It'll cover the kinds of duck that you can and can't, cook. I'm getting really morbid here. I own birds for pets and I'm getting a little willied out here myself. So I'm going to stop with the whole duck thing. But you want to think about that. And you also want to think about, you need to have links on your content that links to other pages in your website and other posts, because those crawlers, they need to understand when they land on a page, they need context. We're really smart now with SEO. Those spiders need to understand, well, I came on this page about adopting an animal. Is this whole website about adopting animals and the welfare of animal good? Or is this just some person's concept of what adopting an animal is all about? And the other thing you want to create that's critical for SEO is you've got to encourage other websites to link to your content. And that's a big one. It's not something you can do overnight. It's called backlinking. And backlinking is critical because you can write 100,000 amazing articles about the welfare of animals, but if you don't have any other websites about the welfare of animals talking about you don't have any other websites that are of anything at all that ever mention your website, then the crawlers have no idea to vouch you. So it's kind of a question of clout with that backlinks. So SEO, important. Once you get that piece of content written and you put it on your website, you want to work on chipping through this checklist. You don't have to do it all in one shot, but every time you nab one of these, you're upping your chances for that. So are there any dying questions here for SEO, Eli?
There aren't questions, but people are so into this list. It'll blow your mind. They love it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. What I always tell people is it's kind of like if you had to like write down a piece of paper how to drive a car and you were like, approach car, touch the door, touch the handle, get out key, open door, put your butt on the seat, close the door. It can seem really overwhelming. By the time you do 3 or 4 posts or pages, and I'm sure that Ben and others that are doing digital, they can all they're all nodding their head. It's become second rote to you. Like, it looks like a lot now, but it's like formatting. It's like knowing when to put a period and when to put exclamation marks in your work. So that's great. That's fantastic. But a lot of people stop there. And that's okay, but we can do better. And
Actually, I've got one more question coming at us real fast from Lauren. Lauren, do you want to throw yourself actually into audio and just ask it out?
Yes. Okay. So the question that I have is, what if you're in a position where a lot of the content that you publish, and I face this with different sites that I run, a lot of the content you publish does not fit into the SEO loving structure of headings and listicles, etc. So I'm thinking, for example, if you're a nonprofit that wants to share a bunch of personal stories from, let's say, the children you're helping.
Yes.
Writing one of those posts, a blog post, update on Stephen's story. You're going to pull the heart out of it if you do like heading, like, number 1 was born, number 2, growth and stuff. So a lot of your content ends up being very difficult to write in an SEO structured way. What's your advice for organizations that face that challenge to still get the traffic?
Right. So the first thing is we got to be honest. SEO is about organic search. So SEO is about answering people's questions. So SEO is not the only way you get traffic, but the first question is this content someone who's going to wake up one morning and go, oh, I really wish I knew the story of Bobby in Vancouver? Probably not. But what might they search? They might be interested in, of course, doing that research. And when you're typing things into Google, you might want to have a page that is about like success stories of working with Wig Co. Let's just say that you're a nonprofit that makes wigs for children, right? So you're thinking now that content could stay where it is. It doesn't have to be SEO'd per se, because people aren't necessarily searching that. Like, they're more like people on SEO are trying to answer a question, solve a problem, or find out more information. But that's not to say that you might want to make one dedicated page that, let's say that the end goal for you is to get people to sign up for your newsletter to become volunteers for your wig making. You might want to create a page where you have multiples of those stories, and you could have the heading one could be success stories of children wearing handmade wigs for cancer. I did a really awful job. I'm not a copywriter, folks, so when I'm doing this on the fly, that could be your heading one. Heading two could be, since 2013, we have been helping children with cancer look better. Again, and if anyone in this room, I'm doing this injustice, I do apologize. I'm coming to my edges on what I find is appropriate. And then you could have heading three, could be Eli's story, and you could have a little bit of text there. Next heading three, Samantha's story, a little bit of text there. The next one would be Jonathan's story, heading four. And next to that story would be a picture of them. And that picture's image would say Allison-wig-co-story. And the alt tag would say, three-year-old Allison wearing a blonde wig made by the Wig Co organization. So do you see what I'm doing there? Is that not all of your content can be SEO'd, but if it's going to be under 300 words, you shouldn't be all by itself. You might want to actually think from a user's perspective of combining 3 or 4 or 50 or 10 of those stories onto one page, and then have that page flow into some sort of story mode. Does that help? It's a good question.
Super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That all makes so much sense.
You're welcome. So yeah, SEO is about people trying to find something. Websites, like, the thing about SEO is not every one of your pages are going to rank. It's more about, again, doing your historical research to figure out, like, what do people already find that SEO is sending traffic to your, or like Google and Bing are sending traffic to. And the next part is, moving forward, we have something in mind we want to do, Allison. We want to increase our donor list, or we want to get more volunteers. Then you would create content that would be SEO for volunteers, especially if you did the work and got, oh, people are actually looking on how to volunteer for organization. We don't even have a dang volunteer page. Whoops, we should probably fix that. So let's go on to the newsletter opt-in. And I can hear people going, newsletters, they're so old. They're like rotary dial phones. Couldn't be farther from the truth. And I'm not saying newsletter opt-in, like someone has to opt in, and then like every month you are now chained to the wall having to put out content for somebody. The reason I think that this is such a traffic driver is that when someone has searched for something, they land on your post or your page or piece of content. They are in the moment dedicated to that topic, which is tied to your nonprofit, right? It's in your wheelhouse. It's what you're all about. It's a part of your heart and soul. You give this great content, they go, wow, what a great story. See you later, website. And they go. And then you are automatically out of their head. The idea behind putting in a newsletter opt-in is that you get folk when they're actually a warm lead to your cause, to your mandate, or to what you want to achieve. So if you don't give them any option, often we hope they'll just sign up on their own as a volunteer or they'll become a donor. They might not be ready yet. But we do know that they have a vested interest in this particular topic, and you're going to give them something in exchange for their email address. And the reason being is that as much as you can love social, you have to hope that people showed up on that platform when you posted something, that they were interested in what you were talking about, and the algorithm decided to put you up on their feed or not. While you might have a lot of people engaging with you on a particular social platform, they may not be ready at that time to go and learn more information, or they actually do really care about the welfare of animals, but right now is not the time that they're ready to think about volunteering. They need some time to think on that. They don't know why they should go and volunteer for you as opposed to the other organization. So what a newsletter opt-in does is, you know that person is interested in the topic because they landed on the page, and then you know that your information was useful because they're going to take something in exchange for giving you their email. And once you have that email, you have their expressed consent for you to reach out to them on your terms. Not when they decide to go on Instagram, not when they decided to go on to your symposium. They are now willing to let you have them into their mailbox. So those opt-ins are really important. And so again, you're going to look at prior content that you have, and you're going to give something in exchange for that opt-in. Maybe there's a guide, right? So there could be a guide for thinking about animal welfare. Again, perhaps there's a guide for how to prepare your home to receive the new pet you're going to adopt. Maybe you're going to make a cheat sheet. Maybe you teach literacy to those who are new to Canada and how to read the English language, and you want to give them a super friendly cheat sheet about how to say 7 wonderful expressions about thank you very much for the lovely meal you cooked me. Right? You'd have a lot of fun with this. There's a lot of places we can go. Or maybe you have quizzes. Maybe you have noticed over the years that people always ask the same question around this topic. It'd be really fun if they could find out which adoptable animal could you be, or which beluga whale that we have in the harbor that we named last year are you most like. Or you could also give them reports. So after you've done your AGM or you've been a part of a larger organization that ran a wonderful, beautiful deep dive report on the state of local housing, or a report on the state of workers' compensation in your province. People want that information. And so if you create a post that they're interested in, and then they want more, that they're telling you, like, I am so interested in this piece and I would like to have it. And then you've got their email, which will take us into step number 4. But in this step here, what can you do? So you can use Canva to create some of the things you want for free. Let me see here. You can use drip scripts. Let me see here. MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, Tiny Letter, all kinds of things that you use. So I'm wondering if anybody here has a topic and they would like for me to help brainstorm what they could do for an opt-in. Ooh, it's like the best part.
Yeah, people, that's actually the question I was thinking. Okay, so we've got Mary Lou Miller asking about cancer care.
Okay. Well, Mary Lou, I mean, of course, this is out of my realm altogether, but I would say for that, okay, who are you talking to? Is the thing you're going to give for the person who is going through it, or the person is going to be that caregiver? We got 2 different sections here. Maybe you want to create a guide for caregivers to prepare them for their own self-care as caregivers. A whole other topic here is just those caring for those who need it. Who's caring for the caregiver? So that could be a guide in there. Of course, we would understand what makes sense from an ethical and tasteful way that you want to do that. But I'm sure there's a wealth of guides that, are there any common questions that get asked, or is there a common sentiment or feeling that happens for a caregiver that you want to calm them with, or make them feel supported by creating a guide? I mean, again, it depends on what you're doing and the nature and the tonality of what you're doing. But maybe that guide is, my spouse has been diagnosed with certain cancer. Now what? A 3-page guide or a 10-step guide on how to prepare for your first call with your specialist. That could be very useful. Cheat sheets, I'm not so sure for that one, but again, maybe in the community you could have, cancer care, maybe a lot of past people who have gone through, maybe they have favorite recipes that they want to put together in a little book they can download. There's something like that. There could be a report on the state of cancer care in your province. What has changed? What is different? What strides have been made? That report could be more aimed at, I don't know if your mandate at that point is to get more organizations on board with what you're doing. So you kind of have to frame your opt-in and your content around who you're talking to at the moment, your key audience. But that could be one cookbook. I could see like a download of 20 recipes from our clientele, or however you want to name it. Guides could be for those going through it. Guides could be for those helping out with being the caregiver. There could be a guide for basic language, or you could have a resource of just all the numbers in the province that you can call. I think about that for a number of years ago. A local paper here called The Coast did a huge piece on everything for family planning and abortion. And it was a great list for all the Atlantic provinces of every location, every phone number, how to call, wait times, all of that great stuff that could help individuals with their family planning. So that's an opt that you could have. If you've identified, again, you already have content you could turn into something that people would want to have, something useful, right? Like, don't just get people's emails, a good, useful thing.
Good. Mary Lou actually has a follow-up question, which is around, would you talk potentially to donors in the same manner, or like what kind of exchange magnet would you do with potential donors?
Ooh, so potential donors could be a fun one. I think in that case, I think stories work really well. You could, if you have anything that maybe there was a really long project you worked on that took 3, 4, 5 years. So you could talk about the milestones that hit and the journey that came out of it. It really does depend on, especially now with COVID, where we can't really have people go in and see what's going on. For donors, of course, if they haven't donated yet, it could still be about the topic at hand. It really depends on the nature of your nonprofit and how long that donor cycle is, how much or how little you're asking of them, monetary or time donation, and what you expect out of them. But I would say, is there any success stories so that they can download that, or a guide so they can see? I guess another great way of being it is even a guide for how to do something would show a donor that your organization is proactive, that you actually do help, and that you do have the resources that, oh my gosh, if only they had more funding, if they could put this together, imagine what they could do with more donations.
Thank you so much.
Oh, fantastic. So all kinds of awesome brainstormings with those to get those up and going. So you got that, right? You got them into the site, you got their email, and now they've gotten the download. And then some people get this far and they just peter off. But here's the thing. So we know that they were interested in the topic and they really wanted this thing, but they might not know who you were. They might not know your organization in detail. You don't really know if they're going to be a more of a prospect for a donor, or maybe they're actually going to be a client, or someone you're going to actually serve instead of someone who's going to be a donor, depending again on the topic you want to choose. So you have what's called a newsletter sequence. And what happens here is I will automatically get the download, but then you're going to set up this system once, and then it's just automatically going to do the same thing every time someone signs up for this piece. And the reason we do this is because we know that newsletter welcome, you might have heard them as a drip script or a drip campaign, you might have heard them as a welcome sequence, new sequence. Their open rate for the entire sequence is 50%, whereas the average monthly or every 2-week newsletter is around 11% open rate. And the reason we know this is because people literally were like telling you, not only do I'm interested in this topic, I want the thing you gave me. I am currently actively in this mode about this topic. And so you can think to yourself, well, that's really great to say, Alison, but like, who's going to sit down and write these? Drip scripts will write them for you. It is a free service. Oh, look, I think our also asked just loaded, by the way. I just want to show you here, before I know I'm stepping back a bit, like also asked, you can see here, watershed restoration. There was what's in a watershed, what is a watershed lesson, example, main purpose of a watershed. Oops, maybe you can see, maybe this one got a little off topic for us. What is a watershed and why are they important? This one didn't work so well, but you can see that sometimes this could be a really great way for you to drill down some questions. So watershed wasn't the best example, but you can see what it looks like when it loads. Anyways, so drip scripts is free. It's not really a tool you use. It's just a collection of email pre-made templates that you can copy and paste into your mail platform of choosing. And they even have one here for new subscribers. And we'll just click it, right click here, quick to see it. So in this one, they're suggesting you're going to send out 5 emails. You don't have to. You could send out all of 2 or 3 emails. So the first one, of course, is you're going to get immediately, they're going to get the download, and then they're going to get an email from you. And they even tell you in drip scripts the purpose of the email. And then they'll just give you some copy and subject lines, and they give you some tips as it goes along. So here they're saying in your first email, you want to make sure the subscriber gets the thing that you said they would give them, just in case they didn't see it load up on the website or what have you. And also you're going to start priming them for what's next. So some things I recommend in this is they've gotten your download. This is a good time for you to do a very short introduction into who your organization is, especially if they came in organically and they were searching for something specific, like care for someone going through cancer. They might notice your logo and your link when they're searching, but they don't really know who you are. And here's how you do it. If you expect people to download something and then go in like a day, like, what website was I on 2.5 weeks ago? Oh yeah, www.blah.com. That's not going to work. It's better for you to start nurturing them about who you are. So I recommend the first email is literally, by the way, in case you didn't see it, here's a link to download that thing that you should have got. And also, hi, we're the nonprofit organization. We've been around since 2013. And in the last 7 years, we've done X, Y, and Z. We were wondering what is really close to your heart about this topic.
Alison, you are melting people's brains here in the chat. People have never encountered this resource and they're super excited.
It is. It's so cool. Now, this one in particular, I will say, folks, I find it a little salesy and like, hey, what's going on? Which is totally fine. You can edit this one. I find I like a starting point, and then I will rewrite the whole thing to fit the language and voice. But second here, you can see, this second email is to figure out how to reply with the number one problem. So I think that would be a good way to answer that prior one about the donor situation. You might want in your second or third email to kind of ask questions to figure out if this person's more a donor prospect or like a volunteer prospect or a media prospect. You could have a lot of fun building these out, right? And the other key thing to the script is we're here for traffic growth. This is where you're going to tell about all the other blog posts you wrote about this, right? Like they only came to your website for one blog post, but now you're just reminding them 3 days later or a week later, hey, by the way, did you know we wrote 4 other great pieces about this? Or here's a story from one of our survivors, or here's something that we achieved last year that we were really proud of that was in the news. Oh, you can have a ball with it. It'd be a lot of fun. So any questions about drip scripts? Check the time here too. It's 4:55. I'm only halfway through. I do apologize.
Keep running. No questions.
Okay.
Go.
Okay, so of course, don't forget about your newsletter locations. You want to make sure you have the sign up on your homepage. It's probably the most visited page on your website, so put it on there. You want to make sure you have a dedicated page just for your newsletter. Do not make the mistake of telling people in social media, hey, we have a newsletter, go to our website. And they go to your website, they're like, where in the heck is this sign up? Put it on a dedicated page. And on that page, make sure you tell them how often they're going to get it, what the download is if they're going to get it, and how often they're going to hear from you, right? So they go, oh, I know why I should sign up for this, because it's going to get it every month. It's going to be tips on X, Y, and Z, or it's going to be updates about what this organization has done. Make sure you have a page just for your opt-in. It's not only going to live on that blog post or page you wrote. It might be on its own section, again, for you to use when you're doing social media. And you want to put it on any relevant sidebars, footers, and pages with tasteful, of course. Don't bonk it over people's heads, but just make sure that you give this opt-in as much chance to survive as possible. And the other neat tip, if you don't remember anything else today, is when someone gets and signs up for your newsletter or your opt-in, make sure they are redirected to a thank you page. In fact, if you do it on mine for today's resources, you'll be taken to a thank you page to download it, which is nice, but there's a reason why we're doing that. Because when you do that redirect, you are going to create a destination goal in Google Analytics. And that's how you saw that earlier, that chart where I had conversions and everyone coming through. You'll know how many people signed up on your newsletter, but you might want to know of all the places we stuck this opt-in form, which page did most people sign up on, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel next time you make a new one. Like, well, do we put it on the home page or do we put it on this page? Oh, let's go check out our destination goal in analytics. And again, I provide you a resource on how to put that together. So please, my darlings, once you get all this done, sprinkle this everywhere and make sure that when someone signs up, they go to a thank you page so that you can track that effort in Google Analytics. And we're getting pretty close, which is great. So any questions about, I should say, about that positioning before I go on there to everyone's favorite?
Questions about newsletters that have been going on in the chat, but please continue.
Okay, fantastic. So promoting it on social media. We all know it's great and it's beautiful. What are you going to do in this case for traffic growth? You're going to talk about that new piece of content, not the opt-in, at least 6 different ways. And you're going to put that and you're going to talk about that same thing every month, at least 6 different ways. You're going to talk about the opt-in specifically all by itself, 3 separate ways. So you got 9 ways to talk about the same piece of content. Anytime you get any promotion or engagement around that, someone writes back and says, this was amazing. We've already applied this guide to our household, or we tried the chicken noodle soup. It was fantastic. Add that to your social media. And here's a big thing I will say for nonprofits: work Buffer or Hootsuite into your budget for next year. Because these systems let you automatically work in through your social media. Buffer is about $10.99 a month. And what I love about it is that it saves everything I've tweeted and put on Facebook, so I can drag them back into my timeline. It also gives me some base analytics of like how many impressions there were. You can pay for more analytics on it, but I would say that there's no reason for you to create 9 pieces of content and then recycle them all the time, because frequency is key on social media. So we want to give this traffic growth the best chance. You can't just make something, put it out once, and expect traffic. It's impossible. Frequency is key with social media. I like Buffer because it's cheaper and a little more easier to use. You can use Hootsuite. Canva lets you publish outside right when you create something nowadays, but I'm not so sure if it actually keeps that schedule calendar and lets you do it. That I'm not so sure. So any questions about social media? We're on the tail end here, darlings, I promise.
No questions, but I think having these really clear goals for like frequency and how to work with your social is really helpful.
Exactly. And like, 20 minutes, write it all, throw it in buffer, boom, buffer's done. It'll go, hey, I'm empty. You'll just click a tab. You'll just throw them back in. People won't notice. I promise you. People are all over social media all the time. It'll be fine. The other one that's going to blow your mind is growing your online community. So you can do all this work and you can be putting out there and like just killing it with everything you're putting out. But a lot of traps that I find nonprofits get into is they're like, Facebook is our best resource. And that's where we put all of our time and effort in there. We have the most engagement. And I'll go, cool. Then you should grow your Facebook audience. And then they go, oh, well, how do you grow your followers? Or you're thinking, well, Alison, you mentioned backlinks earlier. How are we going to get any other website to mention our content? So what you want to do is you're going to mine the audience of like-minded folk that are talking about the same content as you are. You're not going to go out there and try to find 10, 50, 100, 100,000 new people to talk to. You're going to go do research on people just like you, find out what their community is doing, and start following their community. And you do that with a program called SparkToro. Yeah, it's free. Boop, boop. I love SparkToro. So it's free. The free plan lets you do 10 searches a month, and you can't download what it gives you, but you can just do a screen cap. It's fine. So this is made by Rand Fishkin, who is an amazing marketer. And basically, it will mine all the social media platforms, and it will tell you who the audience is, what hashtags they're using, their political leaning, what websites they're visiting, what podcasts they're listening to. It's insane. Someone please give me a topic to research. I love SparkToro. Crazy cool.
All right, who's got a good topic? Throw it into the chat.
Who wants to find out about the audience? My audience frequently talks about...
I've got someone here. So from each end is talking about film festivals.
Okay, we're going to do a search for this. I'm giving up one of my search credits this month for y'all, just to see. Okay, so let's see here. So what does it tell me about film festivals? The audience size is very large. The top phrases in there, actually, yeah, we're going to click right into audience insight here. So around film festivals, it shows me all the frequently used words and phrases that they share. So this could be good when you're writing content or when you're creating tweets or Facebook posts. This is literally telling you all of the words that are used and how popular they are. This one is frequently used words and phrases in the bios. And this one might be a little, this one might be a little tricky because I don't know if it's going to skew towards those in film festivals or people who watch them. But hey, you can do up to 10 searches a month. Every month it'll reset. A great one I love here is they show you all the most frequent hashtags. So if you're using Instagram, they're all here. It's insane, right? It tells you the political sharing activity of them, if that's important or relevant to how you organize yourself, which is great. And also geographic location. This is an American product that's based off of Twitter, and then it kind of reverse engineers it. So it's a little skewed sometimes, but you can have lovely results like that. Let me see here. Social, here's a great way that I love to do it, is it'll tell you, of course, Sundance came up, but it gives you all of their profiles. So you could just control click and then save. Like you can start to follow these people and then add them to your Twitter list, add them to your groupings, or do any research you want to do. And the reason is you want to do this, number one, they might follow you back. Great, maybe not Sundance, who knows, but they might follow you back. So bam, you have an instant new follower to add to your flow. But also now you're going to have an idea of what kind of content they're putting out, and you can see what people are reacting to. So if you were like, well, we really want to do a thing about indie film, let's go through some of these top social accounts and see when they talk about indie film, what kind of response do they get? And that can help you save a ton of time. You might be like, this is a bad example. You might say, oh, no one really, whenever they talk about indie film, they get no information. But whenever they talk about strikes, they get all kinds of, I don't know. Again, it would come down to what's happening in that world. And then the last piece is that you can also engage and start retweeting, reposting, mentioning their content, which might also get them interested, but also their audience will start going, wait a minute, that person they also talk about Sundance. I'm going to follow them as well. So this can be a wonderful resource for you to do that. Podcasts. A great way to get backlinks is to be on podcasts. You can see here all kinds of different ones which you may or may not be aware of. But in the overview section, they have a section called Hidden Gems. And what hidden gems are is these are social accounts with smaller overall reach, but they have really high engagement among this audience. So I say, why are you trying to knock on the door of Sundance when there might be something going on with Sheriff Doc Fest? Again, I don't know who these folk are, but there might be a chance for you because they're not as inundated as all these larger accounts. So that's pretty wicked, eh? When it comes to like YouTube and stuff, SparkToro is a great way for you to grow your audience and to start engaging and to know that these people already are relevantly talking about your topic at hand. And you can do that. You can do specific accounts. People will visit certain websites, hashtags. You can do your own information first, and then every 10 months it resets, or every month it resets, you get 10 more. Talk about an amazing, amazing free tool. The paid version is really expensive, so I stick to the free personally. So are there any questions around traffic or growing your online community?
Not yet, but people are very grateful that you've sacrificed some of your searches for us today.
And the good news is that if you do it and then you like retype it the next day, it won't count as another one. It's like, you looked at this yesterday. It's like, thank you, Rand. You don't know I'm going to screen cap this, do you? But I am for my own research. I just love those little tabs. So you can actually just click and open up their profiles really quickly and just like start following en masse and like making Twitter lists or making whatever you want to do there. Then of course, last would be measuring success. So of course you might be thinking, Alison, that sounds like a lot, but I want to just talk about the East Coast Historical Society. So that's a little section, the East Hants community in Nova Scotia. Tiny, tiny little organization that basically is doing restorative work in a little museum in Selma about all the history around the East Hants community. And when we started working together in the spring of last year. They had 86 contacts, and it was literally a physical piece of paper that they gave out to their monthly events. But they would also post it on Facebook, and then they would email it to about 86 emails on a Gmail list, right? So in May, we relaunched their website into a WordPress site, and we made sure to SEO, and it was just formatted. We didn't create new content with their site. We just simply made sure that the headings were right, that all of our images had alt tags and all that good stuff. And they also switched to MailChimp. It was a very deep conversation, and we finally got everyone on board to get away from the paper and onto the newsletter. And we put it on the homepage, on the sidebar. In addition to that, they went and did an intensive Facebook campaign all summer during a pandemic. This little museum is only open 2 months of the year. And their research center is kind of this thing that they can shift around home to home. It doesn't even really necessarily have a permanent resident all the time. So they did daily postings on Facebook of all these old YouTube videos they had lying around the internet for years. They already had content they were scanning as part of their historical documentation anyway. So they would just scan it in and put up on Facebook. And also, anytime someone emailed them or asked them or called them about certain information, they would put that information, that piece of content up there. So they were really determined on Facebook to kick it out of the park and be posting often. So what happened? By November, they had 250 signups. They did nothing extra. They just went from that non-sign-up location to having it on the site in key areas that I talked about. 250 contacts by November. And in January, they had 89% increase in organic impressions, which meant when they switched that website over those 6 months period, because we had SEO'd it a little bit, all of a sudden the bots were like, oh, we understand the context of this website so much better. So we're going to start thinking about you for more keywords, which resulted in a 31% increase in organic traffic. And over that time, it was immense. And according to the president, she said, look, after the work we did, we had more international contacts as far away as Seattle, Australia, and Atlanta. And some of them are now paying membership dues and donating to the society. Because these are people who are expats in Nova Scotia who are donating to it. She goes, I'm certain that having the new website and this new MailChimp email newsletter approach had everything to do with that success. So, my darlings, that's what I have to say about today. I'd love for you to join me on LinkedIn if you want. I'm here for a little bit longer for any questions. I wish you all the best in your growth approach journey. Thank you for your time with me today. Whew.
Whew, that was amazing. I've seen so many emoji of heads exploding today in the chat.
Very good.
People are super keen on this. So thank you for coming in and sharing your expertise. And I've just also dropped the link for AlisonKconsulting.com, because maybe you need to work with someone really smart and clever. There are a number of ways that Alison could potentially work with you. So I'd say go check it out. Otherwise, what do people need to know? Video will be shared. All these resources are actually available at this link, and we'll make sure we share the link to all the attendees as well, so you can hunt them down and download all these links. I think the SEO checklist is going to go down as a famous document within this community. But I think that's it. We've totally run out of time. So Alison, I'm super grateful for you coming in and sharing your expertise with us today. This was super amazing, and I think we have one question still in the Q&A, which honestly is not for you, Alison, though. The question is really, I think, more for us as a community, which is, what type of networking groups are there out there for marketing and digital analytics professionals here in the Vancouver and Lower Mainland area? If you've got a great resource around that, either throw that into the chat, or if some of the others know where to look, I'd love to hear from you there. But I think otherwise, for those who need to leave now, I really appreciate your time, and we will see you all again in March for a subsequent event.
Thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Awesome, darlings. Do you need me to hang on, or are you good for me to...
I think you should run at this point, since this is really a Lower Mainland question from here on.
Okay. Well, anyways, everyone, enjoy it. Have fun. Lots of content making, and it's worth it. It's worth the time, because your work is so valuable, and the work we do in nonprofits is so valuable. Let's put it out there. Keep it up there.
Amen,
please.
sister.
Okay.